we absolutely have to start in 8-man football. We are now 1 week away. Within a week's time, we're going to be crowning an 8-man state champion at Monmouth College on Friday night. It's going to be either Amboy or Ridgewood. Ridgewood, the 9 seed, will take on the number 2 seed, Amboy Clippers. Both teams from our local coverage area. So, Mitch, this
Yep.
is really exciting stuff. We always, have had a team from our area. Most years we're, fortunate to have both the teams from our local coverage area in this 8-man division.
Right.
And again, this year in the state championship game, you got 2 teams that we know a lot about. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, no question about it. Friday night there in Monmouth, as always. I just looked at the weather. It's going to be cold. Seems to be freezing cold there every
Yeah.
every state championship game. So yeah, this is great. We've known what Amboy's been, for 2 years now. Certainly this year they've really have looked unstoppable. And for Ridgewood, you've been really high on them all season, Greg. They come in at the 9 seed, but they battle their way all the way to this game. So you'll have to answer this question for me. Did they play in the regular season or no?
They played Amboy in the regular season, and it was a 2-point game, I believe, or it was
Okay.
maybe a 4-point game. It
Right.
was really close.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up in a second here. But they gave Amboy one of their best games of the year. Fell a little bit short.
Yeah.
I believe it was at the Cambridge Bowl. Yeah, Amboy was on the road. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Let's look back to the state semifinals in 8-man. It was Amboy getting the win 40-6 over Polo. Clippers had the hot hand in this one early on Saturday afternoon. They're, of course, getting the win, heading back to the state championship game for the second straight year. They jump out quick in this one, scoring on their first 4 possessions and a stout defensive effort to lead the way. The Clippers surmounted a massive lead early and never looked back. Long drives played a huge part in this one, as Amboy was able to overcome some poor field position with drives of 90 and 99 yards in the first 20 minutes of the game. So great effort
Yep.
all the way around here by this Amboy defense or Amboy offense and Amboy defense. They can hit you with some big plays, but clearly they can establish themselves and move the ball downfield and kind of, slowly, methodically pick away at you.
Right. They've kind of shown that all year that they really jump on opponents early. They did it in this one. I think Polo fumbled on the first play of the game and Amboy ended up scoring on that. So, but then you see, like you just mentioned, long sustained drives of 90, 99 yards. They've been so good. Defensively, as you mentioned, a stout effort. Polo got into the red zone, I think 4 times in the first half, but they all came up
Wow.
short.
Yeah.
And so again, this is kind of similar to how the game was played in the regular season. Polo had a great season. Amboy just appears to be the Achilles heel for a lot of teams, and Polo's included. So, Landon Wetchell in this game had 224 yards. We see a lot of those performances this season. Brennan Blaine receptions for 175 yards and 2 scores. The quarterback Quinn Leffelman added 3 scores on the ground. So, yeah, this was a really, really good game for Amboy, as most games this season have been for them, as they get back to the state championship game and see if they can't win one this year.
Yeah, I mean, we were really high on Amboy a year ago when they made it to the title game, but we did even at the time think that that felt like West Central's year. I mean, everything, all the pieces seemed to be in place for them to get that win in the state title game, which they did. But man, when you looked at that Amboy roster, it was hard to not think that they, weren't going to make it back with only graduating one senior, a very talented senior in Lindenmeyer, but everybody else is back, and they've lived up to all the expectations. They're back in the state championship game, and now, take that one final step. This is a Clippers team that clearly one of their goals was not just to get here; it's to win it this year, and they're right on the doorstep of doing that. Mitch, before we wrap up the talk for Polo, we got to talk about Brock Solto and his career. What a,
Yep.
I mean, outstanding career. A kid we've talked about week in and week out for the past several years, almost the whole existence of this podcast. Every week we're talking about this kid.
Right.
So exciting to watch, and such a great, playmaker and leader for this Polo team. Give us the rundown on the numbers here. They're remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the best players in 8-man history that we've talked about. Really, when you look
Yep.
at what he's done. So he had 115 yards in this game to cap off his career, which includes over 6,600 total yards. That is including right around 5,400 yards rushing and 104 total touchdowns. So again, I don't know how you don't put that career up with the best in 8-man history. So um, huge part of this Marcos team the past couple years. Be big shoes to fill, but congratulations to Brock on an incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it there. He's been a lot of fun to talk about every week, and obviously has led this Polo program, to great heights here in the 8-man ranks. So certainly going to miss seeing him on Friday nights, covering him, talking about him. But congratulations on a great career. Dilo Fernandez also played well for Polo in this one. He led the team with 129 yards, and I believe he had a touchdown late in this game.
Yep.
Obviously didn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but it got Polo on the board in this one. They weren't shut out. But overall, it's Polo, or it's Amboy here. It's
Yep.
it's Amboy's season. They're marching on to the state championship game. Now, the team waiting for them, the Ridgewood Spartans. The Spartans advanced to the 8-man state championship game for the first time in program history. Huge crowd on hand in Martinsville. That's a 4-hour trip, but Ridgewood really, showed well. They really
Mhm.
they brought the fans there, brought a great atmosphere into what proved to be a really good football game between the Spartans and Martinsville.
Yeah, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong. This is only the Spartans' second year in existence in 8-man, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
So yeah, they've found success rather quickly. But yeah, this was a great battle. Two really good teams going at it all afternoon. It was tied 14-14 at halftime. Going into the third, Martinsville scored a couple times. Ridgewood scored once. It was 26-20 going into the fourth. And you fast forward all the way down to 2 minutes and 26 seconds remaining. Riley Couture finds the end zone on a 1-yard QB sneak to tie the game at 26. And then it was Roy Sandberg who punched his way in for the 2-point conversion to give Ridgewood their first lead since the first quarter. And that would end up being the game there, 28-26. Sandberg finished with 226 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns, along with a pair of 2-point conversions. Riley Couture had 104 yards passing and added that game-winning touchdown rush. 330 rushing yards on the day for the Spartans.
Yeah, I was kind of monitoring this one back and forth, monitoring the score, and then I went back and watched some of the highlights last night. Man, I was really impressed with both teams. A really well played football game, really hard fought game. I think this might be Martinsville's best game of the year. They played a great football game, and even Coach Elder, in talking to him last night, he said that you know this really, he credited Martinsville for how well they played, and it really came down to a couple plays that make all the difference. And that's the great part and the heartbreaking part of playoff football, is that a few plays here or there can determine if you're moving on or if your season's over. So, talking to Coach Elder, he was really impressed with his kids' composure in this one. That they battled throughout, and even in the fourth quarter when they were down 6 and time's winding down, he said their offense, did just enough in this one, found it, made the clutch plays when they needed to. And on the defensive side of the ball, he talked about Owen Anderson and Sean Watt being difference makers. Anderson had a key sack on the final Martinsville possession of the game, and Watt had a clutch interception during this one. So great effort on both sides of the ball. But defensively, they came up with the stops when they needed to. And offensively, you get the job done in the fourth quarter when things are clutch, time's winding down. So great season here for the Ridgewood Spartans as they find themselves in a state championship game.
Yeah, going to be a lot of fun there on Friday night between two really good teams. Who, as we just mentioned, that they, I think it was a 6-point game. Looks like it was 48-42. Um, that was a tight game. It was 20 to
Yep.
14 and a half for the Clippers. Um, and again, we talk about how Ridgewood played them the best this season. They're going to have to do it again. Amboy has really, that was about the only time that Amboy has really been tested. They haven't been slowed down. I mean, they still scored 48 in that game. That offense is really, really good. So you have to keep up with them. They certainly did it in their regular season game, and Ridgewood has shown to have a really dynamic offense there with Couture and with Sandberg. So it's partly you have to match Amboy blow for blow, but you got to come up with some defensive stops somewhere.
Well, I think a big part of this game will be right away in the first quarter, right? I think Ridgewood's got to come up with some stops and get a little bit of momentum on their side early. And I think when, Coach Elder talked about the offense doing what they needed to do to get the job done, I think they got to strike early in this one, or at least be able to sustain some drives and hold the ball for a little while, not let that Amboy, offense really grind you down and just, hold the ball forever on their side of the
Mhm.
ball, or really hit you hard with a big play to take an early lead and jump all over you. I think
Yeah,
you know that Amboy team really jumped out quick against Polo, and it was never really a game. And I think that
right.
that's if they build that confidence and build that momentum early, I think that this is a team that could run away with it. Now, if you slow them down and you make them think a little bit, and you kind of really throw it at them early, maybe you keep it close, and they know in the back of their mind that it was a six point game in the regular season. I think that goes a long way early in this first quarter of this game.
Yeah, I think so too. Just a programming note, and we'll certainly throw this out there beforehand or even on Friday. The link's already up. The game will be broadcast on YouTube. So, as it is every year, they do a great job there with the production. So, we'll make sure that this link is sent out to everybody. Um, as I mentioned, it's already live on YouTube. As it says live in 3 days. So, um,
Perfect.
yeah, it'll be fun. It's a fun game to watch. If you've never watched 8-man football, or if you have a very limited knowledge of it, this is a great way to get into it. Since one, it's the state championship, and two, it's televised and easily accessible. So, encourage everyone who, again, maybe hasn't had an interest in it or just has never seen it. Check the game out. It's a lot of fun. It's a different style, but it's still really, really competitive, fun football. And you can catch it on YouTube, so it'll be great.
Yeah, I love seeing the hype, surrounding these small communities. When you're talking about, Amboy, Lamoille, and Ohio. I know last year, Kevin Hieronymus did a story about kind of how those three communities were really rallied around this football team. And it had been a long time since they had been playing for a state championship out in Amboy. And then on the Ridgewood Spartan side of things, to see this, this energy and this excitement around that Cambridge community and that Alwood community, they haven't, been playing for state championships, so this is,
Mhm.
great for them at the 8-man ranks to kind of have this exposure and kind of have this experience for the players, certainly, but for everybody, around the community, they kind of have this excitement to be a part of. And being in Monmouth, it should be a great crowd, right? Both schools
Oh
fairly
yeah.
nearby, same as last year's, game was. So that's a lot of excitement there. So yeah, looking forward to watching it. I like watching this one every year.